I've just had a very dysregulated week. And I wanted to tell you about it because I got hit with some of my very worst CPTSD triggers all at once. And I was able to pull it together and get my work done and basically take care of myself. But I got really thrown off last Sunday when I was riding in the car with my husband and son on the way home from Los Angeles. And we've been down there to do a live show. And I had a really happy time there. It was this last minute thing to do the live show there, and all these great people showed up, and I felt such love in the room from them and for them, and my heart was just wide open. And then on the way home, there's this 6-hour drive on this long straight highway between LA and where I live, and a really bad car crash happened just 6 or 8 cars ahead of us. And I don't want to get into too much detail. It's triggering even for me to talk about it, but basically a car that had been coming down the other side of the highway, like way across a wide median, came flying and flipping over and landed on our side of the highway. There were 2 lanes, and between the car and all the stuff that had been in the car, it just blocked the whole highway. Everything came to a stop. And it was nighttime. It was 6:30 at night. And after a minute, I couldn't really see what was going on, and after a minute I got out of the car. I decided, okay, I'm gonna go see what's going on. Some other people got out and we went up there, and I ended up helping to move stuff off the highway, and then I had to make a decision, because I knew that on the side of the car that I couldn't see from the highway, which was, thoroughly shut down, we could stand there, but I knew that on the other side of the car there was gonna be some bad stuff. And so I went over there, and there were 2 people, and one was a woman who they were pulling out of the car, and one was a man who was on the ground. There were no paramedics yet. It takes, we were in the middle of nowhere. It took like 15 minutes for them to come. It felt like 45 minutes. It felt like so long. So I sat with this man who was conscious. He didn't seem to be critically injured. He could move his toes and everything, and I talked to him and just was like talking calmly to him and helping him to cope with what's happening. We had a blanket on him. And I'm not really sure what happened to his wife. It seemed kind of bad. It was a very serious situation. And I don't know if she made it. But I stayed until the ambulance came first for her, and then they took him, and I promised him I'd stay, and I did. And I'm glad I did. I think I was able to comfort him and bring calm right in this terrible, worst moment of his life. And when I got back to my car, I was basically in shock. And I got a chance to notice what that kind of trauma feels like in my body at this stage of my recovery. Like, I've had some bad stuff happen in my life, but thankfully not in a while. I have so much more healing, just kind of as a baseline right now. So I got to see what that's like. And I still get dysregulated, but I'm able to both experience dysregulation and kind of observe what's happening and why it's happening and what to do. So I thought I'd share with you 22 triggers that I still have that I'm aware of, and 4 of them were activated last Sunday when I was helping with that accident. So, all right. Number 1 trigger, still for me, is any kind of real life violence. And I think I'm not the only one who has that, but I saw that, I witnessed that in the accident, and it immediately kind of like threw me into a shocked state. I don't really have much of a problem like seeing it on television. If it's fictional, I go out of my way not to watch real life videos where bad things happen. I don't want to see that. It's very upsetting to me. Violence is a trigger. So that one kind of goes without saying. Number 2 is talking about my trauma. So when I got back to the car, I explained, the car was still back behind the accident, so they couldn't see what was going on, and I came back and explained to them what was happening. And I could hear my voice. I had this very weird, detached voice, very calm, that I sort of gotten stuck in from talking to this man for 10 or 15 minutes and using my voice to reassure and calm him. Everybody's working on this. We've got this. This is really good. They're helping her. The ambulance is coming. I see them now. And I couldn't stop talking like that. I was kind of stuck in this mode. Maybe I was doing it for myself. But talking about my trauma in any context is always risky for me and can get me very dysregulated, and I'll immediately start noticing symptoms of being kind of like out of my body. I was way out of my body for this thing. But in a weird way, because it was a crisis, I was like deeply in my body. I was dealing with stuff. There was a part of me that was just like not there for this. So at first I was just like really checked out and kind of talking in this way. But what happened was, for my husband and son, I don't think they really understood the gravity of the situation, that I think I just saw somebody die or come very close to death, and it was super traumatic. I mean, it was right there, and we were waiting and waiting for the ambulance, and that is such a prime condition for PTSD to kick in, you know, a life and death situation, and I have like old stuff that's happened. So that got triggered, and I ended up like mad that they weren't more comforting and hugging me and going, "Are you okay?" But they didn't recognize it because I was acting so calm. So that's a form of dysregulation. So third thing, when I'm not allowed to speak, or I'm silenced or ignored or not called on, that is a huge trigger for me. So in this one, because they didn't ask me, "How was that? Are you okay?" At first I didn't consciously get triggered by it, but I just got really checked out. And I got very agitated, and they were like, well, as we continued driving afterwards, they're like, "Well, should we keep listening to the podcast?" And at first I was like, "Yeah, sure." And then I was like, "No, I can't deal with all this talking." And then I was angry that they weren't like talking to me more about it. And a friend was texting me and said, "Hey, how's it going? When are you getting home?" And I mentioned what was happening, and they offered, they're like, "Do you want me to get out to the highway and meet you and help you deal with this?" Like, they were so kind that it occurred to me, like, people could respond that way. And then I got really messed up. And that's the weird thing about me. Like, I can get very, very triggered by talking about what traumatized me. And then when I get validated when I talk about negative emotions, later in the week, another friend, I left a recording, you know, we talk on Marco Polo, and I left this recording about what happened, and I think it was a very kind of heavy, thoughtful, honest, you know, this is what happened. And then she left me back a recording, and it was this really, like, you know, lengthy, considerate recounting of what I had told her with these validations kind of added in. And I got really dysregulated. And at first I was like, why is she doing that? And I was using my tools, my daily practice, to start going, you know, don't people know? Like, you shouldn't validate me when I'm feeling bad. But of course, that's what loving people do. That's what loving people do. And it's really hard for me to receive that for whatever reason, because of the way I'm wired or the way I was brought up. But when people validate, like, sometimes I want to say what's bothering me, and then I just want to like put it in a box. And if people start commenting on it, you know, it just like really triggers me. One thing that always really worked for me is being in 12-step meetings where people don't comment on what you said. And I, you know, did a lot of my growth in that environment where I could say honestly what was going on and nobody would comment. And that felt really safe to me. So, you know, something to consider. Maybe you're like me. I'm not saying that's the only way to be or the right way to be, but it's definitely how I am. That I sometimes need space from people commenting on what I said, and then I'll get mad if it wasn't what I wanted. You know, go figure. But it was a bad situation. It was very traumatic, so I forgive myself. All right, so I told you that the big four happened for me in that accident, but I got to thinking, like, what are the other ones that are still really hard for me, just to share with you about it. Okay, one of my big triggers is, and when I say trigger, I mean it triggers dysregulation. Like, people use trigger to just mean it makes me angry, or, you know, it makes me want to fight with you. But I'm talking about, like, it triggers neurological dysregulation to the point that I sometimes can't feel my hands, or I can't really like process information very well, or it's very hard for me to focus afterwards. Like, I still struggle with neurological dysregulation when certain triggers happen. And so I'm no longer like trying to control the world on my triggers. I'm learning to calm my triggers so that the world can just be the world and I can move freely and people don't have to worry too much about me. Okay, but that said, a trigger for me is getting interrupted. I can get interrupted once or twice or three times, but if I'm getting interrupted a lot, it's weird, this like switch will flip and I go into dysregulation and then I can't think. And if I get dysregulated, it is so disruptive to my ability to work. And, you know, I love my job. My job is hard. My job takes a lot of focus. There's a lot going on. We have a lot of people working at Crappy Childhood Fairy. I'm in charge, I'm creating all the content, I'm talking to people, I'm providing coaching, you know, there's just like stuff going on all day. Like, if I kind of check out for an hour, it costs all of us that hour. And so it's really important to me to kind of stay checked in and to stay regulated. So I'm glad I'm aware of this. So the interruptions can get to me. And if I notice it's happening, if I start to feel the frustration that I'm getting, I don't think anybody likes to get interrupted, certainly not a lot. But this thing where I start to lose my ability to like cognitively put things together, if that happens, it's just like such a pain to have. So when I notice it happening, I come back and use my tools. For this, I use writing. And sometimes, I write my fears and resentments. That's a big part of what I do twice a day. But this other thing is, when I'm trying to express myself and I'm not being heard or I'm getting interrupted, that's like this big theme. And I can see how it came from my childhood, but whatever, it doesn't matter where it came from. It's happening now. That sometimes I can just make a note to myself about the thing I wanted to say, because that's part of the frustration is, I kind of walk around with anxiety. I'll forget what it is. Like, oh, I thought of something. I want to say it. I really want to express this. So I write it down and I can say it later or remember to follow up on it later. And that's like really calming to me. I also keep paper by the bed. So if I wake up in the middle of the night, this is not really a trigger thing, but I guess in a sense it is. I wake up and I'm like, oh, I've got to send that check to so-and-so or whatever, contact the accountant, or I think of these things and I have paper so I can scribble it over there in the middle of the night, because otherwise it'll keep me up. Just like, oh no, I'll forget tomorrow. It's just kind of free-floating anxiety, but that's what the writing is for. It's like out of my head, onto the paper, back to sleep. All right, here's another big trigger, buying things. I really don't do well in department stores, especially chaotic, noisy ones, or farmers markets, or that kind of environment, or buying large purchases, like the internet is like such a gift to somebody like me. And my car, there's this service where I live, and you can shop for the car online, and then they'll bring it to you to test drive. And I did that. I did a lot of research online. And I had them bring me a car and I bought it and I love my car. It worked out really well. And I never had to go to a car lot or deal with the salesman. That works so well for me. I mean, I'm not against salesmen. It's just that when I'm under pressure that I have to spend money, and I think this has to do with growing up poor. I used to, if I had to buy a pair of shoes, it would have to be the shoes that would fit every need that I had for the next 2 years. And the pressure was huge. And so this weird pressure comes up. And in department stores, I can last for about an hour, or malls. I'll last for about an hour. There's something about, I don't know, the smells, the fibers, the lights, and the noise chaos. I just start getting woozy. I can't handle it. I get dehydrated and I want to go. And I go and because I don't want to leave empty-handed, because I need something, I end up just impulse buying something and I don't like what I got. So I tend to go shopping by myself when I need clothes, and I'll get a whole bunch of things at once and try not to go very often. That's my style. All right. Number 8 is feeling left out. I think that's hard for everybody, but I don't like feeling left out. When I feel not invited, not included, I'm not in on the secret or something, that one still gets to me every now and then. It happens. Number 9 is feeling unprepared or sloppy in a professional environment. Like when I did my first webinar last month, I did a webinar on work and CPTSD where all of a sudden Zoom crapped out and I just got cut off from the whole thing and I had to call back in. And luckily my team was like, Anna will be back. And I came back, but it dysregulated me. And it's funny because I lead large Zoom meetings with a couple hundred people quite often. But in this case, I knew that some of the people had paid for it, and I felt really responsible for it being a great experience and for feeling like value for money. And part of that is, this will be quality. I will know what I'm talking about. You can just sit back and learn. And then I just got cut off the phone call and had to dial back into my own call. I don't know, probably you can relate to that. All right, so number 11 is getting ridiculed or put down in front of a group. Getting ridiculed or put down, or having those things double bad, is doing it in front of other people. And I am a total goofus. I love making jokes. I love making fun of myself. But the way that I grew up, sometimes I was made fun of in a way that really hurt. They thought that I was too rigid or serious. And honestly, I was, when I was a little kid, I was living in an extremely chaotic environment where people were on drugs and people were coming and going and different men and just all over the place. If I was rigid and kind of like a worrywart, that is correct. But I was made fun of for that. And so that's kind of the theme when people are like, oh God, you're being so controlling. It'll sort of trigger this old thing. And honestly, that's just one of the things that I just go, oh, there it is, it's a trigger. I don't feel like I get more than my share of that. Well, a little bit, if you go on YouTube and just start telling your true stories on YouTube like I'm doing right now, you're gonna get these comments that are, shaming or making fun of you or something, but it's strangers on YouTube. And like, what does it say about somebody that they just like attack people online? It's just so lame, but it can hurt sometimes, it can hurt. Here's another one, opinion bullies. I just did a video about this. Opinion bullies are people who really believe they're right and they get in your face and they tell you what you have to believe and they fight with you about it. And I think that I'm just like everybody else from this last decade where it's really gotten out of hand and people can be quite cruel about it. But the part that's hard for me is I'm pretty thoughtful and discreet, where I have opinions where I think it might be divisive or uncomfortable for people. I don't bring them up in groups. In our membership program, we have a few cardinal rules. It's like, you don't get to discuss politics here. You can do that everywhere else on the internet, but politics is not relevant for what we're doing here. And then we have a no giving direct advice. And so I'm going to throw that in. When people give me direct advice, it is a trigger for me. I don't like it. It kind of interferes with my brain waves, especially when it's about my health. When I had some serious medical stuff going on and everybody got in there and was giving me all their conflicting personal idea of what I had to do, I hated it. And when you're trying to heal a serious health thing, talk about like you're actually like communing with your nervous system and you're bringing it forward into being able to function again. Like that's really what's going on when you're healing. So I really don't like people getting involved in that. And I can get very irritated and start withdrawing from people quite badly. That's a trigger. I don't want to be sensitive like that. And hopefully, I haven't been sick in a long time to test it. So that one. But opinion bullies, where people are like, they hate you, or they say hateful things about people where I'm like, they're talking about me, but they just don't know that I'm one of those people. That is very triggering for me. And it's funny because like my husband is completely fine with that. He just doesn't take it personally at all. He doesn't even care if people think that. He doesn't even judge them if they feel that way about other people. But he thinks it's just because I'm female. I don't know, but I'm just like, they don't like me. If they really knew me, they wouldn't like me. They don't know what I really think. I just want to be over that. I have a fantasy that when I'm 90 years old, I'm going to be so fine with how everybody has opinions, and I'll just be like, I just love everybody. I just love everybody. That's where I'm trying to head with that, you've heard that saying, opinions are like, you know what, holes. Everybody has one, right? All right. Here's another one. This is a trigger for me, and this is street fairs. I hate street fairs. I hate the food. I hate the music. I hate the crowds. I hate the prospect of trying to look at something you might want to buy, because I don't like buying things because it's really stressful for me. Like the whole setup of a street fair is just like totally sensory overload for me. And I don't like them. And I would just like to ask, how come street fairs don't have very good music ever, and who picks that music anyway, and why, and how you can hear two bands at the same time and it's terrible sound, like all that stuff. I'm very sensitive to like bad sound. And so street fairs, one of the biggest street fairs in the world is near my house, like 5 blocks away every year, and I haven't been in like a decade, like, ugh. Very yucky for me. Okay, here's one, and this is kind of related to street fair, but it's like, loud music that reminds me of the 70s drug scene, because in the early 70s I was living in a commune as a little kid, and that music and the sort of aesthetic of the whole thing, but that like, I don't know, that negative nihilistic music really bums me out. It feels evil to me, and I know it's not inherently evil, but it's associated with stuff that was evil that was going on in my home at the time. So that could be part of the street fair thing, and also why I'm like, when are they going to update their choice of bands so it's not like 70s drug scene music? Apologies to those of you who play that kind of music or love it. Like, I get it. I like what I like. All right, here's another trigger. This one is also related to the commune thing. The smell of health food stores. And I mean the co-op kind that smells like a mix of curry, henna, and something sour, and also fermented vegetables or something. That smell of health food stores like immediately makes me feel depressed. I know where it comes from. Here's one. Public nudity. I did a post like very early in Crappy Childhood Fairy. It's not even a video, and it's called Feeling Naked. It was a blog post, and maybe I'll bring it out sometime. But growing up in a commune, I was pressured all the time to run around naked with the other kids, and I never felt safe, and I never felt okay. And then as a young adult, you were supposed to be really cool at hot tubs and rivers and stuff. And then when I actually got into 12-step recovery, one of the first things that happened when I was encouraged and supported and using my daily practice to start just getting completely honest with myself, I'm like, I hate that. And now I don't do it anymore. I do whatever I want. So I don't have to do it. And honestly, I'm not that comfortable when other people are doing it. No judgment. I'm just not comfortable. And yeah, you can see where that came from too. All right, here's one. I think everybody has this. People yelling at me. Boy, do I not like that. Boy, does that upset me. We had this thing happen. Kara, who is the community manager of our members, we were taking a day trip together with our husbands. We went up to Napa, and we went to this food court place to get lunch, and we were pulling into a parking space, and some lady in an SUV starts honking and like screaming at us, and I guess she thought it was her parking place, and I'm quite sure we were there for a very long time waiting for that space, and she had just pulled in, but whatever, the screaming, cursing. And then we went in, and of course I was having a meltdown of paranoia and fear because of the way, it's just like, again, this is the most you're going to hear me talk about how I grew up, but people screaming and yelling often went to violence. And so I sort of go into this place where I'm like expecting violence any minute. Well, guess what? The lady comes up behind my husband and starts bashing him with a baby stroller. Yeah, okay, I'm judging that. I am judging that. I mean, bashing a man with your baby is just insane. And then she went in, she jostled him on purpose and slammed into him. And he ended up talking to her with his kind, gentle voice, like, why are you doing that? Well, we were actually waiting. And I think she ended up sort of melting and going, oh, I'm sorry. And she walked away. And that worked out. But I was there. I couldn't eat. I couldn't think. I was just like, I was on high vigilance about this. But it turns out that wasn't totally crazy. All right, I'm getting towards the later parts of the triggers that I'm aware of. One is, and this is just like a physical trigger, and I've talked about this before, but if I eat sugary, floury food, especially in the morning, I'm going to have trouble staying regulated through the day. Like, part of staying neurologically regulated, it's just a total physical thing. It's not just emotional. It's not just experiential. It's what I put in my mouth. And eating protein and keeping the sugary flour stuff kind of away really helps me kind of stay regulated. It's just, I can pay attention, I'm focused, my emotions are just kind of humming along and, responsive to what's going on around me, and not just kind of, feeling too much, just thinking about stuff that's off topic all the time. Who needs it? All right, here's one. Being woken up too many times. I can take it once or twice, but, when it happens like 15 times, not so good. And it'll make me really angry and kind of bring on an emotional flashback. I was very lucky. My two kids were I co-slept with them, and they were just calm, and I really got to sleep pretty well with that. But there's other circumstances, noisy neighbors, people who snore, that kind of thing, that can really make it hard for me to sleep. All right, another one. Fearing someone is mad at me or talking behind my back. I'm getting over that. And this one gets me in the morning. I'm vulnerable in the morning, but I wake up in the morning often and just see, what have people been writing on the YouTube channel? Sometimes there's just a comment sitting there like a turd waiting for me, and I see it and I'm like, oh, there it is. Don't get dysregulated, don't get dysregulated, don't get dysregulated, but it makes me mad. And sometimes I'd really like to just come back hard at those people, but there's never a point. I'll just give you a heads up right now. There's just very little point in ever responding to people who are bullies and jerks and who put you down online. And luckily, if it's your channel, you can just remove their comments or hide them from the channel. So if people are really abusive to me or anybody else, that's what I do. And but it doesn't quite have the satisfaction of really telling them a piece of your mind. So, but if I were to do that, that would even be more dysregulating. So it's for my sake as well as theirs, as well as the community, that I just don't do that. So finally, the last one is having conversations about complex issues like the news or personal finance, or what do we have to do at work today? Because, you know, my husband runs the operations now of the business. And so in the morning, first thing in the morning, sometimes he'll be like, oh, I've got a lot on my mind. Let's talk about it. I'll go, wait. I have to do my daily practice first. And I'm not just being picky. If I try to take on something that involves a deep thinking and stress before I've written my fears and resentments and meditated, I can almost never get back to my ideal focus. So that's kind of the cardinal rule. And I go to my little space and I go do my daily practice. If, you know, I'm always talking about this, but if you have any of these triggers I have, if you want to learn how to calm them, this is what I did. I learned a specific writing technique and a simple meditation. They go together. I teach them in a free course. They're always down in the description section. It's there freestanding, called the Daily Practice. It's also on the free tools page of my website. The free tools page is linked in the description section as well. I'm just sort of throwing it in your face all the time, but it can really be helpful. So I go do that in the morning all by myself, and then I come out and then I can talk. And so those are the 22 triggers that are still active in me. And one day I hope to tell you I have a few less and hopefully no new ones. So if that interests you, you want to learn a little bit about it, I have this 15-minute video, very quick description of what it's like. If you're not ready to commit to the course and you just want to know what are you even talking about, I've got a video that explains it right there, and I will see you very soon.